And we're live.
We're live. Okay, well, good morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
Thank you for coming.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to talk about you guys went to see a presentation by Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
And all three of us have been following him for some time, a few years actually.
Mm-hmm.
And but you guys actually paid money out of your pocket, took the time, scheduled it, and went to see this man. And so I'm interested in asking the two of you, young men, okay, which is what he claims to have his demographic be most of. What did you guys think of that presentation? And with that, who would like to go first?
I can start.
Okay.
So I took some notes while I was there, but there's so many points that impacted me that it's tough to pick any single one to talk about. So I think each point definitely deserves time of its own.
Okay.
But I think maybe just for today we could talk about one that I think about pretty frequently, almost on a daily basis, and it's the idea that we should find purpose in our life by climbing up the Jacob's ladder of goals.
Jacob's ladder. Okay. Explain
So-
Jacob's ladder.
So I'm not too sure if Jacob's ladder has origin in.
I think it's biblical.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
something like that. Biblical or mythological or something, but it's a ladder going to the sky, right? That has no end to it.
Okay.
So it's the idea that we will never be able to reach the top of this ladder, but every single rung is a goal that we should pursue and keep climbing.
So everything step.
Right. And in that climbing itself, we find purpose and we find meaning and we can find fulfillment. So it's not that there's an end goal in sight, but it's that climbing the ladder itself, accomplishing different goals throughout our life, should be our goal itself.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So it would be endless, right?
Right.
You would always have some goal to attain.
Right.
That's deep, huh?
Yeah.
Because you don't just stop on one thing.
Right.
I've also heard it said many times that one of the biggest shortcomings that we can do to ourselves is setting our goals too low and reaching them. And then you set your goals too low, you reach them. If you stop there, then you stop growing.
Right.
You're dead on the vine. So I like that idea because that is a ladder that continues. You reach this goal, but you got another one. So every step is a goal.
Right.
And he was talking about that. That's excellent.
Right.
What about you? What is your take on?
Well, he talked a lot about purpose. Like, he talks a lot about purpose in life, and he talked about the story of Exodus and the Egyptians and the Hebrews that were in the desert working towards the promised land. And kind of similar in that sense, he was talking about how the promised land is constantly changing for us. So the moment that we reach our promised land, which would be a goal in life that we attained, and prior to that, we're in the desert on our way looking for the promised land. Once we get there, we go into the desert again in terms of goals, and you kind of start over, and you have to find your way. At least that's the way I interpreted it. He's like, because and he compared it to, you could be at the top of, let's say, the food chain. You're a senior in high school. You're at the top of your game, and then all of a sudden, you're a freshman in college, and then you graduate college, and then you're in the desert again. You're unemployed. So it's constantly seeing that as like you're working towards, and you don't stop once you attain that goal. You keep going. But I thought that was a cool comparison or analogy.
Okay. Now you said something at the beginning of the podcast. You said you think about this almost constantly, almost on a daily basis. So this thing really impacted you, huh?
Yeah, definitely. It's an idea that I've kind of had before as well. I don't think it's the first time I've ever heard of the goal because Jordan Peterson's words kind of, he has that theme a lot in his speeches. But to kind of hear it live with him and put in such a concise way, it stuck with me a little bit more. It kind of cemented inside my own mind a little more.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, daily goals that we all have, we all think that there's going to be, the promised land, like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow kind of thing. But it's never there. And we should I think on a daily basis, keep that in mind so that we are allocating our precious time and our precious energy into goals that matter. And we're not just kind of sprinting towards like a proverbial promised land. So I saw this a lot when I was in public accounting, actually, is that the mentality of a lot of people was that they just wanted to make it to retirement. And they were willing to, give up decades of their life doing something that maybe they didn't really enjoy. Some people enjoyed it, I'm sure, but a lot of the people I talked to seemed to be under the conception that they just had to tough it out and make it through and survive till the promised land, and then their life would be great. And that didn't really, I didn't agree with that for myself, at least.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes when they make it to the promised land, to the retirement, because I'm close to that, right? Or been semi-retired now, but it's not what you think it was.
Right, exactly. You get there, and then there's more desert here, and there's more goals. So that's one of the biggest things that taught me to find fulfillment every day. It's not a race, and the end of the end of the race is the ultimate goal. It's every step we take along the way should be what we find fulfillment in. So I mean, this hearing again from him really made it like ironclad in my mind that I have to keep doing important things every day that serve me, that fulfill me, that help others, that fulfill my goals, my values, and there is no end in sight until ultimately we all will pass away. But throughout our lives, I think we have a duty to take meaning in every day in all of our goals.
Super cool, man. Super cool.
How was it different? Because you've been listening to him on YouTube, right? Everybody found Peterson on YouTube.
Right,
How was
right.
it different being there in person for you?
There was something in the air. I mean, it's almost like the difference between seeing a comedy sketch live versus on YouTube.
Yeah.
The air is different.
Yeah.
The energy is different. And the way he spoke was so. I mean, the silence was the most quiet silence ever. Between his words. But every time he spoke, it was so impactful. And there was so much emotion and delivery, even though we were up in the nosebleeds and the seats. It was great. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, there's something definitely different sitting there in person.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I thought the energy of the people. Everybody's there to listen, and actually everybody's there, I think, to improve their life, right? You can go to a concert or a comedy and you're trying to maybe escape your life sometimes,
yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
Or a movie. But here everyone's the crowd seemed to be wanting to get ahead in life, which was interesting. It's a cool environment, and I thought it was very different, because the cool thing about online and podcasting and things like that is you get to hear him kind of pause and put out his thoughts, and that's one thing he does very often. He just stops.
Yep. Because you can tell he has this sentence in his mind, and he's perfectly building it out and assembling it before he loads it in the chamber and then fires it off.
Right. And then even there, he actually would he would kind of step back and then fix the sentence a little bit. It was interesting because it's just live. It's there's nothing scripted. I'm sure he's done a million lectures, and so he's good at it, but it's just right off the cuff. So that was interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And in your comparison, you just gave something up on you. You loads the chamber and fires it up, so you're definitely into guns, right? Yeah, no doubt about it. It's interesting also that I have heard him say, since you mentioned that retirement, you guys are super young. I'm a lot older, so I'm closer to that point. There's a buddy of mine that has been thinking about retiring for 10, 15 years. And his idea of retirement is, go to the beach and sit on a lounge chair, get underneath a palm tree with a little bit of sun and drink margaritas or whatever. And Peterson picks an example of that. And he says, if you would do that every single day of your life, you would end up miserable.
For sure.
And so I got that thing. I send it to my buddy, and he goes, "Oh, that changed my mind." So Peterson has a way of coming across, and apparently he's reaching the younger crowd. He's certainly got me, okay, but he's reaching the younger crowd. What do you think that it's in what he says that is actually reaching young people, and it's not just young men anymore. You know, I hear that also everybody's gravitating towards him, but it started apparently with young men. What do you think that he says that it's reaching the younger crowd?
I think it's two main things.
Okay.
He allows people to find purpose and to find hope where in their lives and their daily habits they've lost sight of those things. I think it's super easy for young people nowadays to just be super caught up with social media, which kind of creates a false picture of the world, which sets their expectations incorrectly. You know, they said like, "Oh my God, these people's lives are so amazing. Why is my life so depressing? Like I just sit in my room, like I can't do this, I can't do that." It completely falsifies, I think, a healthy perspective. It makes it almost impossible, in my opinion, because I was kind of the generation that didn't really have social media until I started to get late elementary school, high school. But I can't imagine if I was from the womb with like TikTok in my hand, which kids are nowadays. It's I have felt personally the effects of like social media and how it can distort your world and make you depressed. There's so much science showing that there's a direct correlation between social media use and like depression. So I think kids are just immersed in that pool nowadays. They don't have a chance. They're born into it. Where I feel like I'm still able to like step out of the pool, get some perspective, be in the real world. But if you're born with it, you're so addicted, you don't know anything else. And I think because young kids are so glued into that environment, they start to lose hope and lose purpose, and they can't get out of the pool. Where Jordan Peterson says, "Hey, like get out of the pool, put your phone down, like make your bed." He starts doing all these, giving these rules for life, like his
Rules
book,
for life, yeah.
right? That seem, I guess,
Basic.
They're basic, right?
Yeah.
And they almost seem like chores or something that people wouldn't want to waste their time with. But I think kids nowadays are starting to become so pushed in like their sadness and their yearning for purpose, that they're starting to say like, "Oh, here's a way out. Like I found it. There's this guy like laying out this road in front of me that he's pioneered. A bunch of other people have taken. It's like this is my route." So
Cool. Now, did you see? It may be hard to gauge, but did you see younger people than you guys in there? Did you see people of all ages? I'm interested because I haven't yet been to one of his live presentations. I'm always missing him. I got something else to do. I can't cancel this, that, whatever. And he's come around like 3 times, and I've missed him on all times. But did you see like younger people, older people? Is it a myriad of people, or what was?
I saw mostly younger people.
Okay.
However, I did see people that looked like, I was like, is that a professor or something? You could tell they were senior. Mix also people with their significant other, their girlfriend or their wife. I saw that too. But I saw middle age, like I would say what, in their 30s, probably like 30s, 40s, in that age range. And then people, of course, in their 20s.
Yeah, I saw a lot more 20-year-olds than
Yeah.
I think I expected, I guess. But that just goes to show about, he's reaching the young crowd so effectively. Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it was
That's
really
excellent because, like you say, he's giving them purpose and hope. There's, I've been listening to him for many years, and he's also he brings up an example where he says that a psychologist or whatever, a young man goes to him and gives them their issues, and he says, "Don't worry, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." And Peterson says, "No, you're not gonna be fine. This is not exactly the road to cover." And one of the things that he throws back as a big, big word is accountability. And he says, "I'd like you to try this out and be accountable for this." And that goes with the two things that you say, gives them purpose and gives them hope. And it's a step at a time. Yeah. And you're right, we get immersed, not just the young people. Well, the young people maybe a more propensity because, like you said, they know nothing different. But guys like me, I have friends around my age. They're in social media, tremendous amount of time.
Oh yeah, I mean it consumes you. One thing he's all about personal responsibility. That's what if you see Jordan Peterson, you see the name is like personal responsibility. So he's that proponent to that. And another thing that's interesting is that he has a perspective from the teaching point of view, right? He's been in universities probably his whole life, but also in practice,
Oh yeah.
which is interesting. Like, he had his practice and everything,
Mhm.
so he's seen who knows how many patients, and he's seen it acted out. And that's one thing that I kind of have a beef with sometimes. Is like, you have a professor, of something that has never actually in real life put those tools to work and
Right.
tested them out. So there are a lot of theories and ideas, but it's like, that doesn't seem like that would work
Right.
in real
Nothing's
life.
pressure tested.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so that's one thing that I think is cool, that he speaks from like, no, I've seen it done. Here's his, my perspective, he's saying, but I've seen it acted out. And personal responsibility is the biggest thing. I mean, when did you start getting into that world of, let's say, self-improvement and personal responsibility?
For me personally, it was, after I graduated from college, because pretty much my whole life growing up, I struggled with responsibility and this and that. I struggled with like fitness and health, and I always push it off in favor of video games and and temporary instant gratification. But after I graduated, I think I started to invest my mental energy into it, and it really started to. I mean, I planted all the seeds, and it grew like amazingly. So over the last few years, especially.
Nice.
And it's not just Jordan Peterson. There's a whole world out there. There's a sphere of them that are linked together, and they all have similar messages coming from different perspectives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, I was listening to David Goggins on Joe Rogan's podcast recently, and they all have these tremendous life experiences that allows them to talk about a topic, and
Right.
it's so great to hear it from so many different perspectives. And yeah, I mean, I've been slowly watering the garden of my mind with all those kind of words, every day, every few days, stuff like that, and it's awesome. I mean, it improves your life considerably.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's so many people out there. Like, I was listening to even Mike Tyson's podcast,
Mhm.
and I brought it up on the previous one, but he was interviewing Ice Cube, and one of them, Ice Cube says that at one of Tyson's biggest fights, Tyson lost, and the world was like extremely sad. But then he came back and then became a champion again. And so he was saying that a true hero can get to the top, fall, and get back up again and be at the top again. And it's pretty cool. We have a lot of examples, and the internet. That's one of the positive things that it's brought about. We can listen to these guys directly, like if we were at their table.
Right.
That's really good. By the way, I really like that saying, watering the garden of my mind. That's I never heard that. So I'm going to write that. I wrote that down. I like that very much. And also to a point that you brought up, I also listen a lot to Patrick Bet-David. He's a entrepreneur, businessman. He's made it from nothing to a very high level. And he talks about the point that you just brought up about, I'm not trying to pick on professors or anything like that, but let's say someone that's teaching a subject wherever, okay, about business, but they've never owned a business. They never opened their own business. They never really truly know what it takes to run a business, but they're teaching, okay, how to run a business, how it supposedly gets done straight by the book. And I'm here to tell you, man, there's a lot of stuff that the books don't tell you, and running a business no matter where, it's not necessarily by the book. And so that was the point that you brought up. Patrick brings that up, quite a bit, where he says, who are we listening to? Okay?
Right.
Because there's so much information out there, and so many people, everybody and their mother has a podcast. So who are we listening to? Are we listening to the Grant Cardones, the Davids, the Petersons, and on and on and on, the Joe Rogans, which is a fantastic, he tries to cut right through to the chase and to the truth, and that's what we need nowadays,
Yeah.
So that's an excellent point, but I like your phrase. That's excellent. Any other points that, because you said you could talk for hours, right?
Yeah, let me pull my notes really quick. There were so many great things.
Pick one more.
Okay, let's talk about. He had this idea of from Piaget, the idea of equilibrium,
Okay.
and how we should always seek to find equilibrium with our relationships and in our different states in life. Do you remember much about what he was saying about equilibrium? I think one example he made was about marital relationships, where you can find yourself out of equilibrium. Let's say if you have an argument and you're both disgruntled at each other and not talking and stuff like that. That'd be an example of falling out of equilibrium, where when you make up, come to a middle ground on things, you can restore your equilibrium. And this is a concept that he didn't come up with, but the way he put it into words was another thing that he stuck with me and kind of reminded me on a daily basis to think about this concept of equilibrium. I found that my personality tends to favor extremes. So when it comes to working out or dieting or studying or this and that, I like going all the way or nothing. Kind of like the idea of I don't want to, half effort anything. So it's worth going all the way. And if you're not going all the way, then it's not worth it at all. I found that I have to fight this tendency because it doesn't work out very well. And the rapid swings and whatever it might be, going to the gym every single day for a week and then taking 2 weeks off, something like that, I have to find equilibrium where I can find sustainable habits every day and make sure that even if it's not 100%, I can settle for 70% and still make progress, still be happy with that, and then, have sustainability. And the more I think about equilibrium, I find it everywhere in life. Work-life balance, relationships, fitness, everything. So it's kind of a good idea to keep yourself happy and balanced every day.
Yeah. No, it's cool. Sustainability, I think, is that's one of my goals too. It's okay, you want to do something, but if it's short-lived, because I think to become successful at something, it has to be sustainable. It has to be something you can maintain. So that's something I shoot for too. That's why we always talk about that, and I agree with you on that.
He talks about equilibrium. He's a professor. He's got a PhD and all this stuff. So I kind of dumbed that word down a little bit to balance.
Mm-hmm.
Equilibrium, balance in life. You need a balance in life, in everything that you do, okay? Because it's a necessity that promotes the growth. Now, if you going all in on something, there's a lot to be said about that, and that's not necessarily something negative. But if it takes you into it 115% of your time, where you are avoiding, let's say, other areas of your life, like family, friends, girlfriend, wife, health, that's a problem.
Yep.
And you see people that do that, it's short-lived and no sustainability. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm now into the watch world kind of thing, right? I love the way they work inside, the mechanisms that they have, and so you can get really caught into that. And the other day we went to a jewelry store to see some watches and so forth, and a friend of ours took us, and the gentleman, we started talking and started getting into the different kinds of watches, the Omegas, the Rolexes, this and that, right? And he said, one of my biggest customers that he buys watches from owns like 2,000 watches or something like that. But he got into that so much that he actually had to go get therapy. Because every time he walked into a watch store, he bought 5, 10, 50. And he says, this is an addiction like any other.
Yeah.
And so he said, I've never heard anybody get therapy, because they're buying watches.
Right.
You think of therapy of other things, right? But not for. But this guy was addicted to this, so he would drive by, jewelry stores and keep driving. That was one of his goals. Keep driving. Don't park.
Yeah.
So anything can get you out of balance or equilibrium. It's interesting, guys. It's interesting. you want to come up with, you want to wrap it up? We've gone good, or you want to keep going?
Yeah, no, I mean, just all in all, anything else you wanted to throw in about Peterson? I mean, and going to see him, or we kind of covered the main points? Because, like you said, if not, we'll be hours.
Right.
here,
I was gonna say, yeah, it's definitely,
Do you remember what he talked about with? There was a really interesting question. Maybe we can close with this, because at the ending of the what would you call it, presentation, or whatever you want to call it, he started answering questions, and one question was, what was the difference between selfishness and self-care?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I like that.
That one stuck with me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to open up with that one?
Yeah.
Or,
Well, sure. The way that I interpreted what he was saying is that they're the same thing, pretty much. That selfishness, at the end of the day, you're helping a community of future use, because are you thinking like the immediate gratification? He's saying if that's not the case. He's talking about taking care of yourself, and then taking care of yourself tomorrow, and then taking care of yourself a year from now, 5 years, 10 years. You're not actually just taking care of yourself. It's a community that you have to carry up.
right.
And I thought that was kind of cool.
Right. What's really funny is like the concept of that was I first encountered it in college when a friend of mine was, we were all drinking at some night, it was some party, and then he said, man, tomorrow me is gonna hate present me. And then I was like, oh man, that's a really funny way to think, where it's like your actions.
Say that again. Tomorrow what?
Tomorrow me is gonna hate present me.
Oh.
So his actions
Sure.
right now were messing up future him, which he almost looked at like a friend. And then I started seeing myself in that same same
cool.
light over time, where I was like, if I was overeating or if I was doing this or that, it's like, oh man, future me is like it's going to be affected by this choice, whether it was a good one or a bad one. So then Peterson touched on that in almost the same way, where it's like what you do today is going to positively or negatively affect you in the future, and they're just different versions of yourself. You can see yourself as like a community, almost like friends. Like what are you doing today for your friends in the future, which are future versions of yourself? Are you messing yourself up and you're going to be hungover tomorrow, or are you taking care of yourself? What are you doing? And then so to also expand on that point of selfishness versus self-care. I really like that idea, because I found for myself that I could not really take care, or I took care of others before I took care of myself for most of my life. That's how I saw it. I always put myself last. But then once I started figuring out self-improvement, motivation, self-love, all that kind of stuff, it changed a lot in a better way, where I found that if you start with yourself and you invest in yourself, you love yourself, you take care of yourself, you build yourself up, your cup will overfloweth onto everyone else. And it makes it so much easier to sustainably take care of other people. Because if you just pour 100% of yourself out for everyone else, you'll burn out pretty quick, and encounter all sorts of other problems. I remember
like that point.
Yeah, one of my friends in college asked me, he's like, oh, do you love yourself? And I was like, what are you talking about? I love myself. Like, that's such a weird idea. Because I always grew up, with a little bit of self-loathing and a ton of pressure on myself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that when he asked me that, planted that first seed that kind of grew into this eventual idea where it's like, oh, I need to treat myself as I would other people. I need to take care of myself. I need to invest in myself. And then I can continue to take care of future versions of myself and the present
community.
versions of people around me. Yeah.
Right.
So.
That's very interesting.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me say one quick thing about that has come to mind as I hear the both of you say this. And I never knew this. I learned this many years ago, but when I heard it the first time, it kind of shocked me. But I see the purpose of it. For example, there was this guy that was talking about safety and safety in airplanes. And he said, look, if you're in an airplane and for some reason the oxygen masks come down, okay, you need to put that oxygen mask on yourself first, especially if you have children.
Right.
Because you need to be able to stay in control and you need to be able to stay alert so that you can help your children.
Exactly.
If you put that oxygen mask on your child first and the oxygen is decreasing for some reason, okay, and you pass out, that child, okay, is going to have a harder time because the other person that's around is going to be taking care of their children, and it's not something that it's lack of caring. It's just that you only have enough energy to for one, two, so you have to concentrate on. So even in the physical aspect, and I remember having somewhat of a trouble with that initially, but I saw the importance of it immediately because, you know, the oxygen max comes down, put it on yourself, make sure that you're good, and then you take care of the children and the family around you. And
It's
that's
kinda-
exactly what you just said about you take care of yourself, you do well for yourself, your cup overfloweth, and then you can help the rest of the world. I always had the opposite idea growing up. I always put myself last and my family first, and I kind of still have that struggle, but I see how, you know, succeeding in life in whatever aspect, I'm not talking economically necessary, but in every other area, you're able to, not only your
You're able to
family
give
and friends,
more.
but the world,
Yeah.
you know, make a difference with the community, the
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, you can help them more when you are solid.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Totally agreed. I don't think we have to view everything like the Titanic scene, you know, where
Right.
it's you or me. You know, I think life is a lot more like it can be a lot more like the oxygen mask analogy, where maybe not that desperate of a, of a, you know, situation, but for sure, if you know, put the oxygen mask on yourself, you suddenly have the ability to help everyone else around you, instead of just cutting off your own ability to help maybe two people.
Right.
So-
Exactly.
I think we can wrap it up with that. Andrew,
right.
thank you
Yeah.
for
Hey, man.
coming out,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
Salud.
You
Salud,
never
salud.
say no to a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me.
That was very cool. This is the first of many.
I'd like to hear it. I'll be
Thank
back.
you. All right.
We'll put you to work and hit that.
Sure.